Today, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present a world-exclusive interview with a man I consider to be a former member of Oasis, who has also never given a YouTube interview before. Oasis, in true British rock legend style, have burned through quite a lot of drummers. Tony McCarroll drummed for Definitely Maybe and the band's earliest era. Alan White drummed for the longest stretch. His brother, Paul Weller's drummer Steve White, did fill in for a tour while Alan was out of action, but then, around Christmas 2003, Alan White was officially let go. And the next drummer to record and gig with the band is quite possibly the most mysterious Oasis member of all time. Terry Kirkbride. Terry came into the fold just as Alan White left it. As you'll see from our chat, Terry's a lovely bloke, he's very humble, and he just considered himself hired help with the band. But that being said, he literally performed on 2 albums worth of material. There was the Death in Vegas sessions in 2004, on which Terry drummed and which at the time of filming remain unreleased. But there is also an entire album's worth of released Oasis material that he also drummed on. Terry is the drummer on Lord Don't Slow Me Down, an Oasis standalone single that reached number 10, and which also features 2 drum solos. He played on Mucky Fingers, the song that was originally intended to be the lead single from Don't Believe the Truth. He drums on the Japanese bonus track Can You See It Now? From that same album era, Terry also drummed for the Oasis B-sides, Sitting Here in Silence on My Own, the demo of Let There Be Love, which came out on the DVD single, and he also drummed for the only Oasis B-side from the Dig Out Your Soul era, a song called Those Swollen Hand Blues. Terry was the drummer for Oasis's rip-roaring cover of Within You Without You by the Beatles. He played on both the unique Rare tracks released on the Goal soundtrack, Who Put the Weight of the World on My Shoulders and the Cast No Shadow re-record, and he also played drums for the alternative version of Waiting for the Rapture on the deluxe edition of Dig Out Your Soul. So that is 10 fully recorded and released songs with Oasis, an entire album's worth, and I might have missed a few. Terry also played with Noel on the TV special Sitting Here in Silence. He played on The Dreams We Have as Children, and even went out on tour around the world with Noel and Gem. For me, as a fan, he just 100% was the 3rd drummer in Oasis, despite never being made an official member of the band. And today, for the very first time, I'm lucky enough to be able to introduce you to Terry in person. So, let's go behind this black curtain and have a chat. It is my immense privilege to welcome to my channel, for the very first time in fact, a former member of Oasis in what I think might actually be his first interview on YouTube. Oasis drummer Terry Kirkbride, welcome, how are you?
I'm not bad at all, how are you?
Bloody hot.
Yes, it is warm.
Is this your first ever YouTube interview?
It is, yes. Yeah.
Exclusive, yes. As I'm talking to the man who is, by all accounts, the most mysterious Oasis member of them all, I have to start at the beginning. Could you just tell us the story of how you met Noel and how you kind of got involved in the band?
Can you remember the club, the Astoria, that used to be on the corner of Tottenham Court Road and Oxford Street? I was in there one night and there was a band called the Mississippi All-Stars playing from America, and I was there with a few of my friends, and Noel was there with Liam and a few of their crew, and I just said, look, I'm going to go and ask Noel if he needs any drumming doing. And people were like, don't go and ask him, man. I was like, well, I'll go and ask him. And I went up and I said, how's it going? Do you know anybody that needs any drum work doing? And he says, well, yeah, I do. And I was like, oh, right. But it wasn't for Oasis, it was for a band called Proud Mary, who he was about to record an album with.
And they were signed to his label, I think?
Yes, basically. He was going to do the album and release it. And their drummer at the time happened to be the guy from the Inspiral Carpets, who Noel didn't really sort of... I think they parted on bad terms. Noel was a roadie for the Inspiral Carpets at one time. And I think they parted on very bad terms. And he said, there's no way he's coming in my studio. And so that when I went up to him in the Astoria and said, do you know anybody that needs any drumming? And he said, I do. Initially, that's what it was for. And so a couple of weeks later, I was in Wheeler End recording the Same Old Blues with Proud Mary Noel and Gem were actually there, kind of producing it at the helm together, and that was the beginning of it all. Really, that was how that was me sort of foot in the door, I suppose you'd say. Yeah.
So Terry had got to know Noel just by going up, introducing himself, and offering his services. Terry's first performance with Noel seems to have been on the 3rd of May 2003 at the Zanzibar Club in Liverpool. And here's Noel introducing him on stage for what I believe is the first time.
This is Gem. And this is little Terry. I call him Ant and Dec.
I happened to be going home one Christmas, I think it was 2003, and that's when Noel called me and said, can I have a word? And I was like, I'm on my way home for Christmas. He said, well, don't go home, come and see me, and then I'll sort it out the next couple of days for you to go home. And I was like, right, and I didn't. And that's when he said, look, do you want to come and play on Don't Believe the Truth? And I was like, right, okay. And that was the beginning of that. I actually had a proper job at the time, for a rare occurrence in my life. I was teaching drums in a girls' school at the time, in Mulberry School for Girls in Stepney, and it was an all-girl Muslim school. When I went and started the job, I absolutely loved it. They were so cool. The pupils were brilliant. They loved it. They just wanted to listen to Missy Elliott and they'd play hip hop, and they were great, you know. And that's when I got the phone call off Noel that Christmas to say, look, next year, do you want to come on board to do this album? And I had to pack that drum teaching job in because I couldn't tell them how long I needed off, you see. They were like, well, how long do you need? A month? And I was like, I don't know. I can't tell you. And so I was gutted, really, but I had to pack it in to go away to do Don't Believe the Truth.
I mean, that's a lifetime opportunity, isn't it, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. But that job teaching those girls, it was brilliant, man. Honestly, I loved it.
And so, in December 2003, on, I believe, the 21st of December, long-standing drummer Alan White was let go. And pretty much straight after, Noel got on the phone to Terry and asked him to stay around. Terry was recruited to come on board and record the next album, and Oasis were booked into Sawmill Studios in Cornwall, the same place they had recorded their debut Definitely Maybe 10 years earlier. And they were going in with Death in Vegas as producers. However, as many of you will already know, even though the band were there for a few weeks and the album was fully recorded, it was never properly finished, mixed, nor was the track listing ever released. First question's got to be, can you remember what the song listing was for the long-lost Oasis Death in Vegas album?
No, that's a good question. I think I've got it written down somewhere.
Terry does actually have the full track listing for that Death in Vegas album somewhere. He hasn't got it for us yet, but that may be something I'm able to reveal in future. Fingers crossed. And he was able to share some cool stories from behind the scenes during the making of that unreleased album. What do you remember about those sessions and why they ended up getting scrapped?
The whole idea of going back down to Cornwall to Sawmills was that, obviously, was where, you know, like what you said, where Definitely Maybe was done. And, you know, I was just so excited. I was absolutely raring to go. It was brilliant. And, when we got there, I mean, there was photographers hiding in the woods, you know, there was like this really small little railway track coming from some sort of slate or lead mine. And you could walk down that at certain times of the day to get to the studio. And I think some police jumped out on Noel to try and arrest him for walking down the tracks. And it was just like, it was all bollocks, really.
Is there anything you can tell us about the Death in Vegas sessions that people might not have heard before?
Yeah, I do remember Richard Feelers breaking into the wine cellar on the first night, smashing the lock off. He apologised for that, though. You know.
Wow, did he really?
He did, yeah. He did. We ran out of booze, and at Sawmills, they've got a sort of, not a cellar, a sort of place where they store all the booze, like a kind of old-fashioned pantry with, like, padlocks on it. I remember Richard Feelers breaking all them off to get into the, Yeah. He was very contrite the next day, though, and he paid for the, you know.
Paid for the repair.
We had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Richard Fields and Tim Holmes, they're great guys, they really are. And I love the Death in Vegas stuff. I always have done. I remember Liam's birthday was really good. That was a good night out.
Oh, so that Liam's birthday was at Sawmills.
We were gonna. One night there was an Oasis tribute band on, and we were going to go to that for a laugh. And I think that was in St Austell, or Snozzle, as they say down there. But instead we went to this restaurant. There was lots of sort of goofing around and not enough music being done really. But for me, to get invited down to do that was just a dream come true, because to me that they were still the best rock and roll band in the world, And I mean, think of all the drummers they can pick from. Do you know what I mean? To end up on that one track was brilliant, really. Even if it was, yeah, which is not the easiest drum to do. Everybody, I might tell.
I'm going to ask a slightly cheeky question.
Go on, please do.
So, in an interview to promote "Don't Believe the Truth,"
yes,
you may not have heard this, but Noel said this about you. And I think it's bollocks, but he said, "Our mate Terry, we love him to bits, but he's a fairly chaotic kind of character. He's he's the kind of guy that will probably get lost somewhere on tour in Brazil and you'd never see him again."
Is that what he said? Listen, do you know what? He's probably right. Oh man, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that one, like. Yeah. Did you really say that?
He did, yeah. I'll see if I can find the clip and send it you.
We had another friend of ours called Terry Kirkbride, who actually drums on Mucky Fingers on the record. And he drummed on all the stuff in Cornwall. But we'd already asked Zach, would he do the tour? Because our little mate Terry, we love him to bits, but he's a fairly chaotic kind of character. And he, it was... Not that he's unreliable or anything, but he's the kind of guy that would probably get lost on tour somewhere, in Brazil or somewhere. You'd go out and you never see him again.
Melbourne, I got lost. I got lost in Sydney. I was getting lost quite a lot actually. So he's kind of not. He's pretty much on the button with that one, really. So I'm not going to argue with Noel on that one.
After the Death in Vegas sessions were scrapped, the band then reconvened in Noel Gallagher's studio, Wheeler End, to make a second attempt at recording "Don't Believe the Truth." I'm guessing Wheeler End was where you did "Waiting for the Rapture." That's on the deluxe "Dig Out Your Soul." There's a Terry Kirkbride "Waiting for the Rapture" there. I guess that's done there. I guess "Lord Don't Slow Me Down" would have been there.
Yes, "Lord Don't Slow Me Down" was definitely done there. Yeah.
Are there any unreleased Oasis gems from the Wheeler End sessions that you can maybe tell us the name of?
There's a really good track called "International Magic." It's funny, I was only listening to... I've got a CD of it, and I was only listening to it the other day for the first time in years. It's pretty good, man.
There's a demo, International Magic demo, that was released on Back the Way We Came. So the International Magic demo, so there is an Oasis version of International Magic.
Well, the one I've got downstairs is definitely the one that I'm playing on. So, all right. Well, maybe I just played on the demo. I don't know, but it's it's really good. Yeah, I like it. And what's that on again?
It's Back the Way We Came. Best of. Yeah.
Right,
but that's Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. So maybe he demoed it again.
Now that you've got me thinking, now I'm going to have to go and have a proper look and see if I can.
Well, how did things kind of come to an end with you and Oasis? Did you guys all part amicably and everything?
I mean, it did. I think I was always going to be hired help, really. I was never sort of like in the band, if you see what I mean. But I mean, the time when I did play with them, I had a fabulous time. I mean, look, I went around the world with Gem and Noel, and to go to Canada, LA, Australia, Japan. For me, it was mind blowing. It really was. And the shows were just incredible. Playing in front of all these people, and we even went to Moscow. It was weird because we didn't get to go on till like about 4 a.m. because somebody had planted a bomb in the. I am going to blow up Noel Gallagher. This guy said. He phoned from his own mobile phone, though, didn't he, the idiot? So, and there was no bomb really, but so we just kind of like, oh man. So that was an interesting gig.
So the timeline, I think, then for your stuff with Oasis is from Proud Mary. You were recruited in to do some acoustic stuff with Gem and Noel initially, which was they did a show in Liverpool. Then it was the Death in Vegas sessions. Then it was a short run at Wheeler End before Zach came in. Then it was in May 2005, you were in for the Goal soundtrack. And then after that, you did the Acoustic World Tour with them as well.
Yeah, I did. But also in between that, there was also shows at the Albert Hall. Because the first one I did at the Albert Hall, that was with Noel and Liam, Paul Weller, Kelly Jones from the Stereophonics, and Roger Daltrey from The Who. That was interesting because about a week before we were due to play the show, I rode my bike home, arseholed, and then got to my front door and I thought, yes. And tried to get the keys out of my pocket and sort of fell off the bike and broke my wrist.
Oh.
Right? And I'm thinking, oh, Christ. And so I had this little cast on my wrist and I tried to hide it, and when we came to rehearse for this Albert Hall show, Roger Daltrey turned up at Wheeler End and I could see him looking at me, one, thinking, who's he? And two, why has he got a pot on his wrist? And Noel's like, oh, no, you'll be all right. It was a strange time. But the show was brilliant. And that was my first Albert Hall show. And then I did another 4 more after that, with a full orchestra and a choir. And it was just, it was mind-blowing, And they all got filmed and everything. They're all on YouTube,
Are you still in touch with any of the guys particularly?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I managed to get some Oasis tickets for the shows, which I know were really hard to get hold of, and I didn't expect getting any, but Noel was really good, man. He gave us some.
Oh, that's nice that you guys are still in touch. It's all still mates and everything.
Oh God, yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, look, if the phone rang now and he wanted me to come and play, I'd be there like that. Of course I would. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Terry does still do the occasional thing with Noel from time to time. But in the meantime, he is also drumming for his original band, the Sand Kings, who at the time of filming have a series of upcoming live dates around the UK. So you're playing with the Sand Kings again these days?
I am, yeah. Yeah, we've got some shows coming up, yes.
Where can people hear your music and where can people find out where you're playing and show up with their Don't Believe the Truth to get them signed?
We're doing this festival at this, a holiday camp. I think Happy Mondays are doing it. And I think it's when a holiday camp gets turned into a lunatic asylum for a weekend. We're doing a gig in November at Dingwalls with Jesus Jones. In the late 80s, we happened to go on tour with Jesus Jones. It was our first proper tour. I know there's another show coming up with a band called Cud. So it's all fun and games. That was my first proper band, really, when I was 19, 20. Still a snotty-nosed kid, and I loved it. It was brilliant. And finally, although not strictly Oasis related, I had to ask Terry about his time playing with Paul Weller. It was for another Albert Hall show for the Teenage Cancer Trust, and Noel wanted to do a B-side by Paul Weller called The Butterfly Collector. So Paul Weller would come up to Wheeler End, and we started rehearsing that, and a few other songs, and I just got to know him like that. I actually met him in Marleybone Station. He came up to me, he knew who I was for some reason, and I was more worried about working with him, really, because I had heard he could be quite difficult, and he was nothing of the sort. He was a gentleman, he was great, man. Yeah, he's a good guy to work with, and that's when I ended up, that was my first time working with Paul Weller for the rehearsals for the Teenage Cancer Trust gig. There's a thing on YouTube where me, Noel and Paul Weller playing Butterfly Collector. You can watch that on YouTube if you put it in. Terry also told me about what I believe is a previously unknown Oasis track called Mumbo Jumbo, on which he provided the distinctive drum intro. This apparently originated at Sawmills on the Death in Vegas sessions, but in the end, apparently, Noel gave it to Paul Weller, who ended up using it on Echoes Round the Sun. Yeah, well, that track on that album starts with that drum beat, but that drum beat was on another song called Mumbo Jumbo that I'm sure was meant for the Don't Believe the Truth session.
For Death in Vegas session?
Yes. Yeah, and he used some of the drums from that Oasis song, Mumbo Jumbo, got used on Echoes Round the Sun. Yeah, which I never got paid for. Mr. Weller, you watching this? I'm only joking, honestly. I swear to God, I'm only joking.
I also spoke to Terry about his involvement in making Who Put the Weight of the World on My Shoulders, the song that I personally consider the master plan of Oasis in their second era. And there will be a Patreon exclusive feature coming on that in the next few weeks as well, as part of my ongoing Patreon exclusive series to tell the story of that song and how it was made. Well, mate, thank you so much. It has been an absolute privilege to talk to the former drummer for Oasis for the first time ever. Thank you for coming on the channel.
Listen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that's it. The special extended version of this interview is available on my Patreon for Tier 2 supporters and up. A massive thank you, as always, to all my Patreon supporters, and if you would like access to exclusive bonus content, as well as to be credited at the end of videos, the link is down in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, I'll see you next time.